using food restriction and tons of steady state cardio, and you just end up skinnier and smaller.
Yeah.
And I realized at some point it's called bodybuilding for a reason, right?
Sure.
Not body shrinking.
Yeah.
And that was the great thing about working with Flex, is that we didn't do any steady state cardio, and he drove food like crazy. And we used 2-a-day bodybuilding training, hypertrophy workouts, to create the calorie deficit that might otherwise be created either by restriction or a combination of restriction and too much steady state cardio. Which is exactly the wrong message.
Yeah.
Because you've got to think your body's going to respond to the stimulus provided, right? And if you're a marathon runner, you're going to look like a marathon runner. Yeah. If you're a sprinter, you're going to look like a sprinter. And so a bodybuilder needs to figure out, I can't do both because I'm sending mixed signals to my body. I can't not feed it and then do a ton of cardio, because the cardio says, well, God, if I want to get good at this 40 minutes or an hour or 2 hours a day on the treadmill, I got to get rid of this muscle because it's heavy, it has a high oxygen demand, it has a high water demand. I got to get rid of this muscle. It's not efficient for me to do this task that you're asking me to do. And the whole goal really is to create a calorie deficit, right?
Right.
Well, can we create that by doing the HIIT training under load or the bodybuilding type of training and burning the same number of calories with a very different message and stimulating the kinds of hormones and the insulin sensitivity and the muscle protein synthesis and the growth hormone and the testosterone and all those things that are stimulating the growth of muscle, as opposed to the opposite effect. You have to take your body somewhere it hasn't been before, and that progressively has to be consistently, either more weight, more pounds per hour, shorter rest periods, whatever it takes to stimulate the growth.
Hey, my friend, welcome back. It's Mike Mutzel with highintensityhealth.com. As always, I'm so excited that you were here. I appreciate you tuning in, subscribing. This chat with Stan Efferding is awesome. I would suggest getting out a pen and paper because he's going to share a lot of knowledge bombs. So if you're interested in building more muscle, learning how to burn fat better, how to recover better from your exercise, and how to have better performance while you work out, we're going to cover all that and more in this show, which is brought to you by butcherbox.com. You see, as Stan is going to talk about very soon, meat quality, the types of meat that you're getting, mostly beef. He's really big into beef due to the carnitine and the type of amino acids that beef garners to us. That is super important for your physique, for your metabolism. You see, a lot of us, when we get into fitness, we eat things that are not really easy to digest, tilapia, egg whites, things that have anti-nutrients, right? So if you're having imbalanced gut health and you're not getting the micronutrients, you can't expect your body to make leaps and bounds in terms of gaining strength, burning fat, building muscle. So I love butcherbox.com because they make it easy to get 100% grass-fed, pasture-raised beef. You see, oftentimes when we go to the grocery store and we buy quote-unquote grass-fed beef, a lot of the times it's from cattle that are eating grass pellets. They're not even out there in nature, free-ranging, eating grass like cows are supposed to eat. So ButcherBox sources 100% pasture-raised, hormone-free cattle and heritage pork. You see, back in the 70s and 80s, we heard with Nina Teicholz a couple weeks ago, back in the 70s and 80s when fat was being vilified, the type of pork was selected so that it was a little bit leaner and lower in fat. But ButcherBox is bringing back the heritage pork. There's not only pasture-raised, sugar-free, hormone-free, nitrate-free, but is also very tasty. So they have a great offer going on this summer, early summer, and I would take advantage of it because it was so popular last year, they had to shut it down early. So when you sign up and get an account over at butcherbox.com, you can get access to sugar-free, nitrate-free bacon from heritage pasture-raised pork. I would take advantage of that. There's links below this video. As I mentioned, this promotion was very popular last summer and they had to shut it down early because of that. So there's a little button here that you can click, or the link below this, or if you're listening and driving right now, you can go to highintensityhealth.com/free bacon. With that, friends, let's dive back into it with Stan.
So you grew up in Washington? Or?
Oregon, Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Born and raised, went to the University of Oregon, and then I moved up here after I left Oregon and was here for like 15 years, working and what have you. And then when finally I wasn't tied down to a house or a job, we decided to chase the sun.
Yeah.
And Vegas was the most affordable place to live.
Right. So you moved in 07, you said? To Vegas,
we've been there about 6 years.
Okay.
So 12, I think.
Yeah.
2011, right in there.
And you said you got your pro card in bodybuilding just like 10 years ago?
2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were in your 40s.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I kind of had a comeback. I competed all through my teens and in the late 80s, early 90s. And then finally I said, I got to get a job because this isn't paying any bills. So I went to work and dumped the same amount of intensity and energy into work as I did into bodybuilding, and created some very successful companies, over 3 different multi-million-dollar companies over the course of a 10-year period. And then I had time and I had money.
Yeah.
And I had my old desire and passion to be a pro bodybuilder. So I dove in headstrong, and that's why I flew down to California and lived there for months and trained with Flex Wheeler to try and get my pro card. That's
so amazing.
Yeah, and just chased the dream.
Yeah.
However, lucrative that was or wasn't is a different issue, but it was it was just a passion of mine.
Yeah, you learned a lot from that probably, which I want to dive into. But growing up, like Flex Wheeler, Ronnie Coleman, Lee Priest. I mean, these were guys that when I was 14 years old, I started this was right when bodybuilding.com was coming on the forums. You probably remember those back in the day.
Yeah.
But I grew up idolizing those guys. And I know some of them, like Kevin Levrone, I think he's back competing again.
Yeah, I worked with Kevin getting ready for for his comeback to the Olympia 2 years ago. Yeah.
Nice.
It's kind of what spawned Flex wanting to give it a try as well.
So he's coming back too.
Flex already competed in the Olympia.
Okay.
He came back in. It was the men's classic bodybuilding. He had to diet all the way down to 210 pounds, where he used to compete around 250. But he was 52 at the time. It was just last year.
Wow.
And he had some health issues with the kidney replacement.
Okay.
And so we had to monitor that all along. And as it turns out, we fed him plenty of salt throughout that program, and his creatinine levels went down. And his kidney doctor was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Because he was so healthy.
Yeah.
And I think primarily he had lost 15 pounds of fat and was doing cardio daily, or some sort of exercise. And I always think that's the driver of the health, at least all the initial, health improvements. But the sodium really helped him with his energy, and it seemed to keep, his kidney healthy too. So ironically, you would think just the opposite, or you'd be told just the opposite.
Yeah. That's
the
really.
MDs.
Was he honest with them that he was eating that much salt that you recommend? I know you're a high salt guy.
Yeah. He was, and he was just kind of just salting to taste. We didn't go real aggressive. I didn't put a gram amount on it. He just made sure to salt every meal that he ate throughout the day. And he had some. I was going to think to myself, that was probably it. That was probably the only health issue that he had throughout the whole prep. Was just that he was concerned about the kidney, and we went in and had 3 blood tests, and he had a kidney specialist working with him. So it was, I think it was a successful venture. The very last minute, he was like 214 pounds the morning he woke up that he had to weigh in.
Oh, wow.
And he had to be at 210.
Yeah.
And so we took a mild diuretic.
Yeah.
And mild to his body, with his compromised kidney function, drew too much water out of him. And he ended up at 203 that evening when he weighed in.
Yeah.
214 to 203.
Big swing.
The next day on stage, he hadn't gained his weight back. He was still 203.
Kind of flat.
Flat, no pump. He was so just discouraged because it just kept pulling. So we just fed up. But 3 days after, he was just full and rocked out.
Yeah.
And 3 days before, we did a photo shoot. Fortunately, we have a ton of great shots of him, and he looked amazing. And his body changes like that. His gift is his genetic gift for putting on muscle and getting. It was incredible.
Yeah, his biceps, his shoulders, his legs. He's really got a nice physique.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So the timing of that, I've had aspirations to do a show. I'm not a very big guy, but it seems like you have to time the salt and the water and everything, or else, like you said, you can step on stage and look flat, or, it's got to be tough.
We made a big mistake because I don't pull that out of anybody's program now. Well, the problem is that people get to a couple days out and they're really not lean enough. They just didn't lose the body fat. And so they try and do something to manipulate water, thinking that's going to optimize their look on stage. And they end up looking worse. They end up with a big bloated stomach, and they might get some veins in their forearms as a result.
Yeah.
But I don't do that anymore, not even with women. I don't manipulate water. I don't take salt out. I just try and get them into shape sooner and let them. I've just found that when I can keep them healthy, that their body composition improves more than it would if I tried to drain them, dehydrate them, carb deplete them, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
If I can keep their metabolism fired up, which is hard to do when you're on egg whites and broccoli. It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, just as you know, too much muscle meat or too much protein, you know, that can tend to kind of slow the metabolism. And this is what has happened to these women. This has been going on since the 80s. I've been training females for competition since the 1980s. And it was the same thing that we all learned way back then is going on tenfold now, because you've got
Instagram and everything.
Yes, and it just seems it's commonplace for them to be on these 1,200 calorie diets, eating egg whites, white fish or boneless, skinless chicken breast, with as much broccoli as they can fill their stomach with, or asparagus, and that's their diet plan. And restricting salt, and they just become emaciated. They're just skeletons. You go backstage and look, and they're just tiny little, and they almost look like little teenage boys. Because they've lost all their muscle tissue. They're bony. Their faces are sunk in. It's not a good look.
Right.
And even the head of the NPC, the women, I think it's Sandy Williamson, used to be Sandy Rinaldi back when I knew her. She'll say at all of these meetings for the girls when they come in to talk about the show, she'll say, look, continuing to dehydrate and emaciate yourself is not going to improve your placings. If you want to get better, you need to add muscle. But nobody listens. They just keep dieting harder and harder and harder. They look at the scale, and the lighter and lighter and lighter they are, they think that's going to reflect in better placings on the stage. And that's not what happens.
Right.
They just look all weathered and worn out.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, because if you feed them, they can be full and have nice shape, and still lean and muscular, but you have to feed them.
So part of that, you think, or is the reduction in resting metabolic rate because they're calorie restricted for
That's
so long?
a huge piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, metabolism is going to slow down significantly. And then part of it's that they're afraid of things that are going to improve metabolism. 3 in particular, salt is going to dramatically improve metabolism. Fructose is going to dramatically improve metabolism. Just the fructose for the liver in particular. And they can eat a decent amount of that. They tend to do too much carbohydrate restriction, which slows metabolism and their energy levels, and the salt. Iodine, another huge one. A lot of these women end up with goiter. The same thing happens with pro fighters or men who are prepping for powerlifting competitions and cutting a lot of water. They end up with soreness in there. They end up with neck soreness.
Really?
And they don't know what it is until I say, where is it? And they point, and I say, that's your thyroid, you're iodine deficient. You just sweat it out, all your iodine. This happens to women as well. You introduce a little bit of iodine, introduce a little bit of salt, introduce a little bit of fruit, and their life changes almost overnight. The fourth piece, which is the one that seems to be so controversial for some reason, I don't know, is that rather than getting this restrictive protein source, they need protein from somewhere. Why get it from a whey isolate or an egg white or
boneless, skinless chicken?
Or boneless, skinless chicken, which is so nutrient depleted. I introduce red meat, a lean red meat, a top sirloin steak, and now you've got iron, B12, zinc, magnesium, creatine, all of it, And all of a sudden, they come to life. Those 4 things, calcium included. Being a real important one in terms of stimulating metabolism as well as all the other benefits. You throw those things in there and their life changes overnight. But everybody's so afraid of those things. Nobody eats fruit prepping for competition. Nobody eats red meat prepping for competition. And carbs, oh my God, no carbs. But when you do that, their life changes. And more importantly than that, it's healthy and it's sustainable. So now instead of having this depleted state and ending up with this huge rebound, the edema that comes, the water retention, the fat gain, that whole rebound thing. And they'll put on 20 pounds within a few days after a show if they go ballistic with the eating, which typically happens, and get depressed. And I usually get them then. That's when they come to me.
Because they tried everything and they're like, dude, I don't know what's going on.
Well, they're wrecked. Their friend calls me because they're in the hospital. Suffering from all these problems, the depletion problems. And then we got to start over from scratch. And the first thing you got to do is get through this mental block. And I have that problem now with a lot of the women that I train, and I put them on this diet. And they're like, oh, I can't eat that, and I can't eat that, and I can't eat that. Yet you've got these horrific gut issues and gas and bloating and digestion problems from eating what you are eating.
Man, people's biases are so strong.
They are so strong and so pervasive, and the coaches just haven't. They seem to focus on macros.
Very macro focused.
All the focus has been on macros and if it fits your macros and not the micros. And I understand why, because there's only 3 macros. It's not too hard to educate yourself about those.
Right.
But the micronutrients and how they interact and what foods they're in and how important they are, that's a whole other, as you know, field of study that most people just don't take the time or energy to educate themselves on. Or maybe haven't been experienced or exposed to it.
Sure.
Because I spent, my entire life using sleep, food, and training to manipulate body composition, both for performance and for
yourself.
On a strength and size end,
sure,
and on a body fat, 4% on stage. I've done both, and trying to hold on to muscle tissue while dieting, and then trying to have optimum strength. I've just discovered over the years that there are certain things that make that easier and harder and more successful and less. And I've done it all myself. I've done the dirty bulks, the gallon of milk a day.
Yeah. The weight gainer.
And I put on some weight, with the Gainers Fuel 2500 loaded with, sucrose, glucose, maltose, dextrose, and the headaches and the stomach aches that come with that and the diarrhea. I've done the dirty bulks. I've gotten as big as I possibly could get, for my body, being a small, 135-pound guy in college. I got up to north of 300 pounds.
Wow.
And I wasn't necessarily any stronger than I was at 270.
That's interesting.
But I had all these associated side effects.
Right.
With all of the things that I was trying to do to get there. And then I dieted down to under 220 and not been any leaner than I was able to get at 245, doing it 2 completely different ways. Dieting down to 220 using food restriction and tons of steady state cardio, and you just end up skinnier and smaller.
Yeah.
And I realized at some point it's called bodybuilding for a reason, right?
Sure.
Not body shrinking.
Yeah.
And that was the great thing about working with Flex, is that we didn't do any steady state cardio, and he drove food like crazy. And we used 2-a-day bodybuilding training, hypertrophy workouts, to create the calorie deficit that might otherwise be created either by restriction or a combination of restriction and too much steady state cardio. Which is exactly the wrong message.
Yeah.
Because you've got to think, your body's going to respond to the stimulus provided, right? And if you're a marathon runner, you're going to look like a marathon runner. If you're a sprinter, you're going to look like a sprinter. And so a bodybuilder needs to figure out, I can't do both, because I'm sending mixed signals to my body. I can't not feed it and then do a ton of cardio, because the cardio says, well, God, if I want to get good at this 40 minutes or an hour or 2 hours a day on the treadmill, I got to get rid of this muscle, because it's heavy, it has a high oxygen demand, it has a high water demand. I got to get rid of this muscle. It's not efficient for me to do this task that you're asking me to do. And the whole goal really is to create a calorie deficit, right?
Right.
Well, can we create that by doing the HIIT training under load or the bodybuilding type of training and burning the same number of calories with a very different message and stimulating the kinds of hormones and the insulin sensitivity and the muscle protein synthesis and the growth hormone and the testosterone and all those things that are stimulating the growth of muscle, as opposed to the opposite effect and shrinking the body. So once I was able to determine, to start focusing my attention on just holding onto muscle and getting rid of fat and utilizing those diet techniques and training techniques, I was able to get a pro card.
Wow.
With the same, body that I had in the 90s, the same
leaner.
body weight, but I held on to so much more muscle. When I came back and did it with Flex. Learned a lot from that experience.
So his workouts, so he didn't do any cardio, because standard bodybuilders would do 2 60-minute sessions, right? But you're saying, were his workouts 2 a day in the prep period, was that more kind of like CrossFit aerobic based, like more high volume?
It was pretty high volume.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as much CrossFit. It was still pretty heavy weights. Maybe 20 repetitions would be on the high end. And that's still a pretty good hypertrophy phase. Some people like, the 8 to 12 range. You can grow just as well at 5, but the loads tend to not let you recover as fast, is what I discovered, because I've done both, powerlifting and bodybuilding. And you can grow at 5 reps, you can grow at 10 reps, you can grow at 20 reps. But the 5 reps, but at each rep range, you need to get yourself within about a rep of failure. There has to be an intensity component. if you're constantly, just lifting at 80% of your capacity, then the body has no stimulus to adapt. I've said that you have to take your body somewhere it hasn't been before, and that progressively has to be consistently, either more weight, more pounds per hour, shorter rest periods, whatever it takes to stimulate the growth. And so flex like the 20s for legs in particular. And another thing that it did is it was incredible for the cardiovascular conditioning, and also that EPOC, that excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, which went on for hours. When we'd get done with a leg workout, it was almost euphoric for 4 or 5 hours after you were done training. If you were properly hydrating yourself and feeding, it was pretty euphoric.
The endorphins, kind of like running a marathon or something, maybe. Huh?
Yeah. And so I spread that word as part of my program now, particularly with like CrossFitters or professional MMA fighters, people who train twice a day, bodybuilders, as I propose, is the optimal way to do hypertrophy training. And these aren't 2 one-hour sessions. This is like 40 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night. Because you don't want to create too much fatigue.
Sure.
Just provide a stimulus and let your body adapt. So for those folks, I've had great results with, right after the morning session, replacing everything that was burned off, which is glycogen, sodium, and water. And so I'll feed them glycogen, and in what I've seen from the research, and I included in my vertical diet, in the form of dextrose and fructose. Because the two together, and the study showed it was in a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 dextrose to 1 fructose, showed that it would shuttle faster and you could uptake more when it was what they call like a cyclic dextrin, a couple types of carbohydrates.
Sure.
And then add the salt to it, and then throw the water in there. And a little trick that George Lockhart uses, he's the nutritionist and water cut guy for the UFC that helped John Jones and Conor McGregor and Cyborg. Yeah, he's just amazing. And probably 100 other UFC athletes.
Sure.
A few years back, I had an MMA fighter that I was training for a show, and I called George up and I said, hey, would you mind coming out? I flew him out to the house and paid him to come help me. Cool. Because I've done water cuts for powerlifters for years. Yeah. Almost every record holder in the current record holder in the world, I've done water cuts for them. And I was really comfortable with that in terms of a 1 rep max. Yeah. But how do you train a fighter to drop weight and put it back on and maintain their cardiovascular fitness? Yeah. That's a huge component.
Totally.
And so I had George come out, and that was one of the big things we took away from this whole thing. One, not to put them in a sauna, because it just cooks them from the inside out and they completely lose their cardiovascular fitness.
Interesting.
Yeah, they just don't recover from that. So, and also not to deplete them for too long. Don't pull sodium for too long, or water. It's best if you can get them to drop that weight in about 48 hours. And have them try and get into the water cut weight about 30 days in advance. So they train at this 10 pound or 15 pound or whatever it is, this pre-weight cut weight. And then you drop it in 48 hours. Give them a little sodium load, a little water load, pull it out, get them on the scale, and then reintroduce, refeed them is what we call them. And we used that, and he used that blend. And it's pretty awesome. When you come back for your second bout, your stamina, your endurance, your recovery, everything is much, much improved. You get through that second workout, and their eyes are this big because they don't hit the wall. Yeah. And we no longer let them use stimulants, no caffeine.
Interesting. That's cool. I like that approach.
Yeah. And I propose that to all of the athletes that I train now, because I've seen what a detrimental effect it has on digestion, gut health. I've used the word adrenal fatigue. Oh my God. It's not a scientific term that hasn't been proven. Yeah. But generally speaking, your adrenals are impacted by stimulants, whether it be caffeine or ephedrine or phentermine or whatever people want to take to try and stimulate metabolism and increase body temperature. It has the body's homeostatic. There's a feedback loop that says, hey, here's some cortisol for you, and adrenaline. Affects your digestion negatively, obviously. Affects your sleep. It affects your immune system. Shrinks the lymph, so now you don't have your lymphatic system's not working effectively to help with your immune system. And so we eliminate coffee mainly because of all those negative effects, but also because there's a reason why you need it. You need coffee because, coffee is reactive, not proactive. It's sick care, not health care. It's addressing the symptoms, not the problem, as we know is common in medicine. So why do you need the coffee? Well, I don't have any energy. Well, why don't you have any energy? And then you just go down the list, like you said. Their sleep is horrible, and it might be apnea. Something as simple as a CPAP.
Is that common? You see that in bodybuilding quite a bit?
It's the number one thing I talk about. It's the very first thing in my program that I address. And with a reference articles and how important it is, a whole list of sleep hygiene methods so they can get the room dark, whether they have to use blackout blinds, the level of noise. All the athletes that I train, it's the first thing that I address is how's your sleep? Are you tired? Do you snore? And we try and fix that immediately. Even going so far as to suggest that they get on Craigslist and buy a CPAP because they're $200. Because it might take you months and $2,000 to get through the process to get a doctor, particularly if you're overseas. Socialized medicine, Canada, the UK. I get feedback from people all over the world, like they're not easy to get here. And if I go into my doctor and I don't have severe sleep apnea, they just tell me to lose weight. And how do you tell a powerlifter or a strongman, to lose weight?
Sure.
So,
what about mouth taping for those folks? Have you tried that personally?
No, I've looked at your stuff, and I'm going to try it first myself.
I have some here, some Sonifix I'll give to you just to play around with.
Yeah, I have to. I've even actually gone into the dentist and had a one of those mouthpieces made. And I'm still playing with getting comfortable with that. And I don't know if that'll be effective.
They kind of affect your jaw.
It's a little awkward. Like that. It's a little uncomfortable, but so is the CPAP when you first use it. And it doesn't necessarily work for severe sleep apnea, which tends to be worsened as your neck gets thicker. The crowding will occur, and most of the guys I work with are big, thick necks.
Is that just from trap movement? I mean, just squatting and everything like just the load?
Yeah, just load. It's the load. And I love loading. You have to load to get strong. To get the central nervous system.
Gosh, there's so much here I want to pull apart, but let's go in the order of sequence you mentioned. So after you would lift with flex, you were in a state of euphoria. Do you think that bodybuilders, people that are like powerlifters, people that are pretty intense, are they chasing that euphoria? Is it body dysmorphia? Like what's driving people? I mean, and the reason why I'm asking this, because it seems that some people just can't get the motivation to go to the gym. It's like, have you found a common mental?
If I knew the answer to that, the motivation answer, and of course I've always been driven, I'm type A, doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'm just in it. And here's the reason why. All this stuff that we're talking about, health, weight loss, anything anybody wants to change requires some consistency. I've said in my rants before that all diets work when they're strictly adhered to. And the best diet is the one you'll follow. And the best exercise is the one you'll do. Trying to prescribe something, that's the hardest thing about all these diets, is sometimes they just aren't consistent with that individual's tastes or their schedule or their personal preferences or their different medical conditions or different allergic responses. So it's so hard to paint with a broad brush and to do a one-size-fits-all diet program. I try and focus. It's the same thing I do when I'm teaching somebody how to squat. I want to make it feel good first. I don't want to be a golf swing. You know what I mean? I just want to get them comfortable and get used to just sitting down and standing up, and so that it feels good to them and they're not all awkward. And the diet's the same way. I had my business partner fly down to Vegas and stay there for a while, and because he travels all the time, so we went around to different restaurants and went to the airport, etc., to show him how to select the foods that would potentially make him more successful. Because the idea that he's going to meal prep is a bad idea.
It's a stretch.
It's not going to happen. I meal prep and I travel with all my food, but he's not going to do that. So if I set him up with my plan, he's going to be unsuccessful.
So we can navigate the menu and pick and choose.
I just told him about what he was looking for in terms of macros, what things to avoid, and he had great success. He lost 30 pounds in 30 days as a result of the program, which is not all that uncommon for somebody who's carrying a lot of weight. When they implement a reasonable meal plan, and I'm not even talking about being specific in terms of macros, I'm not being extreme in terms of carnivore or keto or vegan or any of those, which all may work for some people, and I'm certainly not trying to shit on anybody else's meal plan, but is it sustainable? is it likely that this person will use that for the long term? And compliance is the biggest piece. And what's interesting is since the topic came up, it just so happens that it's been something that's been on my mind for years. I started working with a group of programmers, computer programmers, Silicon Valley programmers who do apps, some very good work. They've actually sold some stuff to Apple before, a very successful group. And they're designing an app, and we've been working together to design an app that's a compliance app. Something that gives you a daily checklist, reminds you when something needs to be done, and it has these triggers all set up. You weigh in, it ties into a Fitbit, so I can see the blood pressure, I can see your body weight when you weigh in daily, your sleep. It'll monitor the number of hours you sleep. And then little things like the 10-minute walks, if you took them or not, how many you're supposed to take a day, and the tiny little things in my diet.
Yeah.
I still have a checklist. I haven't competed in 5 years, but I have a little checklist at home, a little Excel spreadsheet with the days of the month, and a big list of things that are compliance items for me. Whether or not I eat my daily carrot, or had an orange, or how many meals I ate that day, what weight I was when I woke up in the morning, whether I took my vitamin D, or my cod liver oil. Whatever it is that is my program at the time, I want to make sure I'm in compliance. And this type of program, which there are others out there that have worked particularly in the medical field for compliance with things like diabetes, that have been very effective. They've drastically improved the percentage of compliance and people's health outcomes as a result. So I've tried to draw from that and into the general community. How is my client going to be more successful? And I tried to pick the big things. It's not whether or not their macros are on point.
That's just not like where you flux, right? I mean,
that can move around, and everybody's preferences are different. And we also know from a lot of the research that they can move around quite a bit and still have successful outcomes. So do I focus on that, or do I focus on the major reasons why people don't succeed? And one of them is the biggest one's compliance. And then beyond that, I don't think it's the macros, I think it's the micros. I think that people, the reason that they stop complying is because they just don't feel good on the diet. They don't feel healthier, they don't have enough energy, it doesn't taste good. And so I try and create a meal plan that actually provides them all of those things. That's the number one thing that I think the benefit that I've gotten from the diet is the energy and the gut health and the performance. I focus on that far more than the macros.
Well, I think it's big, and we were talking. I think the biggest thing about the diet too. You should talk about compliance, but your strength as a barometer of like, okay, so you're lean. Well, that's great, but if your strength takes a nosedive, well, then that's probably not a good thing.
Right.
Even if you're not a professional powerlifter, I mean, there's longevity is correlated with hand grip strength, right?
Yes,
and so.
Seen that.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. And so I think like with me, I mean, I like the cognitive benefits of being keto, but it does affect my strength. So that's when I carb cycle more in and so forth. So I think, but people get kind of myopically focused. They're either carnivore, or they're keto, or they're paleo, or they're vegan. And like this idea of like undulating and like periodizing even your carb intake or your macros is like, whoa, what are you talking about? So how often do you like kind of cycle things? Like if you're training legs, will you have more carbs that day or more dextrose post?
Yeah, same thing for my athletes and different athletes. Some people want to lose a lot of weight right away. And it might be a health issue. It might be 50 pounds overweight and have prediabetes, or high blood pressure, or any number of those complications. In a case like that, I want to try and find something that can restrict the calories the easiest, and limiting carbohydrate intake seems to be pretty effective for that, plus the fact that it helps their blood sugars. That might be a 30-day push or a 60-day push right off the front. And usually people can stick with a program for that period of time, particularly if they're seeing results. Now, mind you, losing weight is going to improve health outcomes no matter what you eat. We saw that with the McDonald's diet, we saw that with the 7-Eleven diet and the ice cream diet. When you lose weight, health outcomes improve. But long term, is it sustainable? Do you create deficiencies for yourself that start to compromise your energy or your strength or your health, as we talked? And so what I do initially is to create that calorie deficit. Might look very different than what I do long term. And that's for health compromised people who are overweight. And my suggestion is that you can cap carbohydrates. I don't like to go under 100 grams a day. Maybe on
keto people are like earmuffs.
Yeah, earmuffs. And the only reason is because I don't want to slow their metabolism. And I like all the micronutrients that are in fruit in particular.
Yeah.
I hate to pull fruit out of a diet. It's so valuable, the potassium. I also don't like to pull the fructose in particular for stimulating liver, but then potassium and the other vitamins associated with that. But I also like to keep calcium in the diet because that's so important for blood pressure control. When you go keto, you tend to lose a significant amount of sodium. And the carbohydrates, the glycogen being lessened, now you're losing glycogen, water, and salt. And people tend to get a little tired from that or a little cramped up. Losing weight kind of helps.
Yeah.
Obviously, your energy levels improve no matter what diet you're on. When you lose 15 pounds, you feel better. There's no question. So I try and keep a little bit of fruit in there. And beyond that, the micronutrients are important to me. The calcium, magnesium in particular for blood pressure control. Those are huge to me. And calcium seems to be a potent stimulator of metabolism as well. And if you're going to throw calcium in there, you got to throw K2 in there.
Yeah, and D, right?
Yeah, and the vitamin D because it absorbs calcium. It helps absorb more calcium. So those are all huge for me. Where do I get those from if I'm on a carnivore diet? I've got to find a source for that. And so I try and keep some foods in there that'll provide those benefits for them. And then if you're a performance athlete, then I want to make sure and get an adequate amount of carbs in there to fuel those bouts of training. The muscle is most effective with glycogen. Now, can you become fat adapted? Some people can, and for particular types of exercise, endurance in particular. But if it's strength in the gym, the glycogen is the king. Now, you can get to the top of the Empire State Building using the stairs, burning fats. But it's a lot more efficient to take the elevator, to have some glycogen in the muscles when you're actually in training. And I will use some timing. I might eat the carbs a couple hours before training, and then I like the post-carb shake if it's an intense training session. And we mentioned getting in some dextrose and fructose and some sodium and water immediately following training with no proteins or fats, because that'll slow the absorption.
I see.
And another thing is that you don't drastically affect insulin levels when it's immediately following training. Your body can take up a lot of that glycogen without triggering insulin release.
Yeah.
And the same thing's true of fruit almost any time throughout the day. It's a much less has much less impact on insulin release. The insulin doesn't go as high, and it stabilizes faster with fruit. But I use it almost like medicine. I'll take orange juice, 3 ounces or 4 ounces 3 times a day. And what are we talking there? I just like 35 grams a day. The liver can handle 75 to 100 in a healthy person.
Sure.
And particularly for exercising. So I do that, and people's metabolisms and energy levels and their body temperature goes up.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. Why do we take caffeine? Why do we take ephedrine? Why do we take phentermine? To raise our body temperature. If you get up in the morning and put a thermometer under your arm and hold it there for 10 minutes, you'll be at 97.8 to 98.2. I know everything's 98.6, but that's kind of the range.
Sure.
Now, if you're 97.6, which typically happens when you're dieting because your metabolism gets suppressed, it'd be more optimal to be at 98.2 or 4. And that can happen just with those 3 things: a little bit of iodine, a little bit of salt, a little bit of fructose, a little bit of calcium. You throw those 4 things in there, all of a sudden, the metabolism starts to heat up and people's energy levels are better, and they come to the gym and they can actually work harder, longer, and recover faster. And this is what happens. I told you I've gotten thousands of emails and texts and DMs from all over the world, from the UK and Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you name it, China, from people using the program, and they'll be like, they're on it for 2 or 3 days, and they're, oh my God, I feel so much better. And I'm as much a skeptic as anybody.
Sure.
But as far as feeling better goes, I'm not talking about body composition or anything like that. But if you're in a depleted state, which most of the people tend to be who exercise, generally half of hard training athletes are iodine deficient because of sweating. If they're not intentionally finding a source of iodine in their diet, whether it be the Redmond real salt or I use cranberry juice myself, has 600% of your daily calcium requirement in just like 4 ounces twice a day, or iodine requirement. So I put all these things in there, and within just a few days, these guys are sending me these testimonials. I'm putting my website, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is bullshit." It's like the world didn't change,
right?
But they sure feel better.
Yeah.
And they feel better fast. And then performance comes right on the heels of that. And that can happen with just, because of the depleted state. You can change things, almost immediately.
Yeah, I love your program. Like I said, after listening to Chris Bell's interview with you, I bought it. We were in California and I was reading it on the plane. It's great. I mean, you really come at this from like the functional medicine approach, like you're balancing the lifestyle. And you talk about, in the vertical diet in the program, like a lot of things that you do outside the gym that tend to be underemphasized in the traditional bodybuilding community, where it's like macro focused and everything. But let's dive into fructose, and I just have a little anecdotal story. When I was 27, so Paula Quinn, I've been friends with Charles for quite a while.
Yeah, I did a seminar with him in UK last few months ago. Yeah, great
saw
guy.
that. One of the strongest times in my life, and like the biggest that I've been, was using his program like first thing in the morning, juicing grapefruit and oranges. So I was having that fructose, and I remember just like my strength went through the roof, and I had no idea why.
The problem is now we've conflated fructose with high fructose corn syrup in soda pops, and we're afraid of fructose. It's been so prevalent in the media, and we've just confused the fact that fructose from fruit is different than high fructose corn syrup, and acts very differently in the body, even when juiced. Not as low of an impact on insulin release as if it were with the fruit and the fiber, but even when juiced. And again, I use small amounts of it because the liver is so effective at turning fructose into glycogen and feeding the brain with it. That seems to be the primary place that the brain gets food. That it will take everything you give it and start converting it into fat. And next thing you know, you got fatty liver and then all the metabolic problems that happens downstream from there. So I'm really cautious about, although fructose doesn't seem to be as big of a contributor to fatty liver as other types of fructose or even starches or anything in excess. And you saw that in the peer study, that fruit at almost any level was protective, which is another reason why I want to eat it, not just the performance benefit, but because we're seeing that it's protective of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. And even the folks from nutritionfacts.org did a great piece on fruit. And these are folks who would probably turn over if they heard that I mentioned their name.
Michael Gregory.
He's vegan. But I'll cherry pick from anywhere. And he's got some great research on fruit and the benefits and how much you can eat, almost endless. And yet we're avoiding such an important nutrient. And it's more than just the fructose. We've said the vitamins that are in that. It's extraordinary, the benefits from it. I'll belabor the point because I'd like to see all athletes, women bikini competitors dieting for shows, and 440-pound Hafthor Bjornsons and Brian Shaws eating fruit. As it has such a huge impact on the way they feel. And I watch these athletes. Their lives have changed because they started eating a few of these micronutrient-dense things that their body really needs. Fruit, salt, a little iodine, calcium, change overnight.
That's awesome. For people that are hearing this and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're promoting fructose consumption or fruit consumption in the context of weight loss and bodybuilding. Is there a timing, like you said, throughout the day, and that stimulates the liver and kind of gets resting metabolic rate to bump up?
It'll increase your body temperature and improve starch absorption. It'll improve carbohydrate absorption from starches just because the liver is stimulated and the metabolism is increased as a result of that little bit of fructose. And I don't see from the studies I just mentioned, nutritionact.org and the peer study, I don't see there is necessarily a limit. It seems to be positive on, the calorie equation being the ultimate concern. You can get fat on anything, even the Mediterranean diet or vegan diet, you can get fat. Eating too much is always a problem, but I've never seen anybody eat too much fruit, to be honest with you. I'm cautious with bananas, however. Because it is a starch, as opposed to the what would you call them, the sweet fruits that we talked about.
Melons or whatnot.
Melons, oranges. And because it's hard to gauge what level of starch that's at. A greener banana will be more fibrous than a more ripe banana. But also because a lot of the people I deal with, and a lot of people in general, do have gut issues. And those starches can, through persorption, end up into the bloodstream, and you've got these starch molecules floating around that haven't been digested, similar to celiac disease and leaky gut and wheat consumption. Those molecules end up clogging up arterioles or capillaries, and starting to wreak havoc on the body. You know, all the cells downstream from that will start dying. So that's an extreme position, but I personally never really been able to tolerate bananas in any. It's dose dependent.
Sure.
I say that about everything on my
vertical
diet with respect to the horizontal foundation that I build. Is there's a lot of things in there you can eat, but you can't build a significant amount of calories with those foods. You have to use them as micronutrients, some of those foods, because they can create digestion problems for you. And if I'm fueling a big athlete who's got a huge workload, he needs to get the calories from somewhere.
Yeah.
He needs to get the protein from somewhere, and he needs to get the carbs from somewhere. If he's burning 5,000 a day, I have to give him 5,000 a day.
Yeah.
And I can't do that with wheat. I can't do that with potatoes even, because too much of those with the resistant starches and the fact that they're a high satiety food, he'd have a hard time eating them all, as well as the possibility for absorption. I can't give it to him in beans or brown rice because of the lectins and the phytic acid, or even oatmeal. He might be able to handle a cup, but can he handle 10 cups of oatmeal?
I tried doing that back in the day. It was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the dry oatmeal, etc. So I'm cautious about what I use to build the foundation of micronutrients. Very diverse. I think that's important. And of course, trying to meet all of those needs, the amount of potassium and magnesium and calcium that you need, and the vitamins and minerals. And but now when I'm building the vertical platform, what everybody always hears about the vertical diet is it's steak and rice, steak and rice, steak and rice, all day long, every day, steak and rice. But if you're a big athlete burning a lot of calories, there will be more steak and rice. And the reason I use those two, steak and white rice, is because they're so easily digestible. Steak in particular is so nutrient dense, as we discussed, in comparison to chicken or egg whites. And egg whites have the avidin. You can't eat those in large quantities. They're a high allergen food. And chicken is of no comparison in terms of
from a nutrient standpoint.
Yeah, the micronutrient standpoint, the B12, the iron, the zinc, and the polyunsaturated fats in feedlot chicken.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm not a fan of that. I prefer the saturated fats for athletes. I think they're more easily digested. There's less, the polyunsaturated fats are going to oxidate. So I don't think it's an ideal, those omega-6s in mass quantities. I don't think it's even close. And same with turkey. And I think the only reason people historically have bought and eaten a lot of this stuff is A, because it's low fat, and B, because it's cheap. There's a reason why it's cheap.
Yeah, it's junk.
It's junk. It only lived for 3 months on soy.
Never saw the sunlight.
Never saw the sun, and that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
Ultimately, as you're up here in the food chain, you benefit from everything that the animals below you eat and is grown from the earth and the sun and the water and the vitamins and all that other stuff. The cow's got 5 stomachs, so you don't have to do that methane thing. And it gives you a great deal more nutrients. Ideally, if that cow has been grass-fed, and I recommend the bison, which is awesome. But it's $8 a pound at Costco, and 10 or 11 a pound everywhere else, and 20 a pound in the UK and Canada.
Yeah.
And so I have to be a realist. I have to live in the real world. When they contact me and say, Stan, can I use ground beef? In a good, better, best scenario, preferable over a feedlot chicken, absolutely. Use the ground beef. Ideally, you'd be able to use some grass-fed food. I've said before in one of my rants why I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah, I remember.
I had the time and money to make some of these choices, but not everybody does. They're on a budget. I get messages from people over in Europe all the time. Red meat's hard to get there.
Yeah.
Iceland, very expensive. Lamb, pretty affordable.
Right.
So we make some options that are more affordable for them, even if it's down to ground beef as a good, better, best scenario.
Yeah.
I want to make it easy. I want to be realistic. College students on a budget, what can they do to optimize performance? I was there. I packed my PB&Js and my eggs and chicken into a big class and popped open the Tupperware, and people from 10 rows down would look back wondering what the hell that stink was. Yeah, and that was my 6-hour-old hard-boiled eggs that I was eating. So I understand it. And calories reign supreme.
Yeah.
I train football players, high school, collegiate, and professional. I was at the University of Washington here. I brought a quarterback up that I was training.
Yeah.
And he was being recruited by UW, and the trainer there was talking to them about how busy their schedule was going to be, and how important it was that they ate. And this was one of the biggest things that I always try and tell kids when I go do seminars for football players. I tell them, you don't grow in the gym. All you do in here is break down muscle tissue. Your coach gets you for 2 hours, and the rest of the time is your responsibility to recover. And that's going to take a lot of sleep, a lot of food, a lot of proper hydration. Well, the trainer said, look, if you have to pack half a dozen PB&Js in your backpack to get enough calories so you don't come in here tired every day, he goes, then that's what you need to do. And on a grander sense, when you go down to the University of Oregon, where Phil Knight put $60 million into their new training facilities, they have a huge cafeteria there where they fly in chefs that are going through culinary school, their masters in culinary, to cook for these guys. And it's salmon and steak. It's not mac and cheese and pizza. And when they come off the field, the first thing that they do when they walk to the locker room is there's a juice bar set up, and there's about half a dozen guys back there making these shakes and writing the guys' names on them and setting them out.
Wow.
When they come off the field, before they go into the locker room, they're required to drink this shake. Then they change, then they go to the mess hall and eat. And to be honest, I asked the guy, I said, what's in those shakes? He goes, well, some of them have their own, special
powder they bring.
Or whatever. He goes, but most of them are chocolate milk.
Yeah.
It's just calories at that point, because they just burned a ton.
They're young.
And they need tons of calories. The one other thing that they control there, which I think was the reason they were so successful for so long, their sleep. Coach makes sure that they're in bed at a certain time. They all stay in the football dormitory, and they have night check. And he controls every meal, every hour of sleep, and of course all the practices.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and
That's really
I think that's why they were so successful for so long.
Yeah, dynasty. Yeah, it makes you think. I mean, because you see on the sidelines, these football players are getting paid, $25, $30 million a year drinking Gatorade. So you're like, well, we're eating Skittles, and Marshawn Lynch, made a big thing about that, right?
Yeah.
But so if they're doing that, what are they not doing? Like the sleep stuff? Are they on their phones, circadian rhythms, and
Of course they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that message.
And the thing about Gatorade, and I tell my athletes they need to get more salt in, so they're trying to figure out how to put salt in water, and they're using salt tablets, and I did plenty of that.
Yeah.
Dr. Sandra Godek's research, she's from the Heat Institute, or she runs the Heat Institute. She's a PhD, and she studies thermoregulation. She very clearly said that optimally you would salt your food, that you cannot get enough salt out of like a Gatorade. Because if it were enough to compensate for the dilution of the actual water volume that's in there, it wouldn't be palatable. So the idea that you can get enough salt out of a drink, I don't think can be achieved.
Yeah, it's going to taste bad.
It's going to taste terrible, and you'll get a lot more. Even Dr. Di Nicolantonio talked about just taking a half a teaspoon of salt and putting it on your tongue, which is 1,000 milligrams of salt, and then washing it down with whatever drink you're drinking is much more effective. And even like right before a workout. And I've been having athletes do that now for some time and realizing extraordinary benefits in terms of performance.
That's interesting. That's a really good tip.
I'll have couples contact me regarding headaches. They'll get those training headaches. And that little bit of salt, and a few other these minor little things, little iodine, little fruit. And all of a sudden they go to train and the headaches are gone.
So interesting.
Yeah. It's like life-changing like that.
Yeah.
Little things that we think is common sense.
Right. Yeah,
but lessons I've learned over and over again.
Salt's been demonized like fat, right? So people are scared of it.
Of course.
And they think it promotes water. They're trying to cut water and water retention. But going back to the gut, so you talked about how these women step on stage, and not to pick on women at all, but just we were talking about, and how people just are not lean enough when they step on stage.
Yeah.
Whether they're competing or not, people want to lose weight. Do you think part of that is like inflammation from gut health from the foods that they're eating?
Yeah, and the body defends against this optimal state of lean body mass, the fat loss, by retaining fat, by retaining water. So everything that you're doing to try and get conditioned for stage is actually creating this opposite response from the body. Now, the way we manage that in our industry, which is a big smoke and mirrors thing, is that when we suppress our thyroid, we take thyroid. When we're out of energy from salt depletion and micronutrient deficiencies, we take caffeine or phentermine. When we're losing muscle, we take Anavar or testosterone. See, that's why the industry is still doing those things, because they compensate it for it with the Anavar and the clenbuterol and the thyroid. Problem is when you take thyroid medication to remedy a thyroid deficiency, which was caused by an iodine deficiency, you haven't fixed the iodine deficiency. And now iodine deficiency is very important for your immune system and all your other organs, and for shuttling hydrochloric acid into your stomach for digestion. Iodine is a part of that process. So now you've complicated your digestion, which is going to decrease the amount of minerals that you can absorb, the very important ones we talked about, calcium and magnesium in particular. So this is just this never-ending, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, but it's really allopathic in nature. It's not holistic.
Right.
It's reactionary, like you said.
Yeah, sick care, not healthy.
And that's why you see a lot of, I mean, there's a few people like yourself, Mike O'Hearn, who I think are pretty constant in their body composition.
Yep.
How's your back? I know you had a back injury.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's 100% actually. Yeah.
You're back already?
After Dr. Stuart McGill's stuff, I tell you, that was amazing stuff.
Yeah,
That's
I watched that
another
rant.
Yeah.
We gotta talk about that later, because that's really super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so I think there's a lot of people ebb and flow in terms of their body composition because of this reactionary approach. And so your method is very functionally medicine based, you know?
That's what I mentioned. It's sustainable. So now instead of having this thing where you're peaking and then responding with the water retention and the weight gain and the energy fluctuations and all of that, and even the more detrimental things, such as your thyroid shutting down because you're supplementing thyroid to try and compensate for the problem, it's sustainable. Now it's a lifestyle. Now when you get in a few of these nutrients every day, like you should, your body starts working for you. I said before that if you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do cardio after 5 hours of sleep, it's a zero-sum game. You're stepping over $100 bills to pick up nickels because you've just slowed your metabolism. Yeah. You're increasing hunger, decreasing insulin sensitivity, slowing your metabolism, all the things that you don't want to do, thinking that you're getting up at 4 a.m. And I think it's this mentality that we have in sports in general. The more I suffer, I'm going to work harder than the next guy, or I'm going to suffer more than the next guy. I'm going to get less sleep and do more cardio, and I'm going to eat stuff that really makes my stomach feel terrible. The more I suffer, the better I'm going to perform. Yeah. And we're finding now is that that's not true at all. That there's so many things you can do to help your body work for itself, as we had talked about now ad nauseum, getting more sleep being a huge one. And I think it was that interview Joe Rogan just had recently. Stasha Gomenek, of course, her stuff's fascinating. Yeah. With respect to more sleep in the gut biome. Just improving your digestion just from more sleep.
It's crazy.
Yeah. As well as the social disorders and the development of the jaw and all those things that go well beyond my expertise but are just fascinating to watch and to understand. Which occurred with my daughter. I'd put her to bed at 10 p.m. and wake her up at 8, and she was miserable. She was crying and she was fussing and didn't want to go to school. Yeah. Put her to bed at 9 and woke her up at 8, and she was a completely different person.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, she was singing and dancing around the house just from 1 extra hour of sleep. But all of these things, I think, what frustrates me is they're so simple, but we've been so influenced by the dogma or the media or whatever else to convince ourselves that we need to deplete this and deplete that and to put ourselves in this painful state of torture in order to justify whatever it is we're doing and think we're going to have a better outcome. And we don't. And you learn that particularly in the strength industry, because everything affects strength and it's so quickly and easily measurable. Body composition tends to change over time, and you could kind of cheat the system for a while until it bites you, but with powerlifting, it's almost immediate.
You can tell.
You lose
these micro changes.
Yeah, you have one short night of sleep, you go to the gym the next day, and it's severely impacted your performance.
Yeah, interesting. So I think strength is just a good barometer. That's why I love people to, like the walks are great, hiking's great, if yoga's your thing, fine, whatever. Do what gets you into a flow state, I think is great, but that's where strength comes in, because if you're doing a downward dog, you don't know, is it an 8 or a 10 out of your RPE, relative perceived exertion? You don't know, but if you're squatting 135 or 225 or whatever, and you can only do 1 rep, and you can normally do 5, that's pretty significant.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way, and the nice thing about designing these programs for people is they see such an immediate response that it positively reinforces what it is they're doing, so they keep investing more and more energy into being more and more compliant with the program, and ultimately that's what it's about. Yeah. Just while I'm thinking about it in terms of, we'll talk about GERD, gastric reflux, and I've had so many people one of I think it's probably the top 5 or top 6 medications prescribed is Nexium, and the others for antacids for gastric reflux. Yes, those. And I've had clients that have been on prescription antacids for years, 5, 6+ years, who within 3 days are completely off of it because they eliminate the foods that are causing the problem, and they introduce low gas foods that don't aggravate the problem. The presumption is that they had low acid, or high acid. Right. They thought they had too much acid. And in 90% of the cases, it's because it's too low, and the food's not getting digested correctly, or they're eating gassy foods, and it creates that environment that then causes the acid to get into the esophagus and create the burn. Problem with that is now they're not digesting anything very efficiently, particularly minerals.
Yeah.
And so they become deficient in all of those. Coffee is a huge one. Relaxes the sphincter for the esophagus. And now they think that they need to take antacids to solve that problem. So that's another, and I hate bashing on stuff, I really do. If you enjoy your coffee and it doesn't bother your stomach, I prefer if you drank it just after a meal and not by itself when you wake up in the morning, because that's going to cause a lot of hydrochloric acid to release. Your body can't, you just keep producing that stuff. It needs, to create it from somewhere. And so the next time you eat a meal and your acid's low, you're not digesting it well enough. There's so many other deleterious effects from drinking coffee that when I pull that out of people's regimen, they feel so much better. They go through a withdrawal symptom.
Yeah, a few days.
But it's a drug, it's a stimulant, it's not something that, of course, with all the money in coffee business, we've been sold that it's healthy for some things, We keep getting told that it could help the brain. And maybe there is some acute benefits, but the chronic benefits far outweigh the acute benefits of drinking coffee. And the only reason I keep belaboring the point is because it's something that most people do in excess that creates all of these problems that I think could be easily solved in the absence of coffee. And if I put them on a vertical diet and they still drink coffee, the chances are they'll still continue to have those problems. The diet can't fix those things.
Yes,
and that's true with everything. You keep putting toxins in, whatever they are. We call coffee a toxin, but in general terms, you're going to continue to have the problems no matter what you do.
So if you're feeling a little tired, will you just not train that day?
There's a reason why I'm feeling tired. If I didn't get enough sleep, then I know that's a problem and I need to remedy that. If I'm short on salt for the day, I'll probably just get some more of that. Another big thing is that if you just get up and take a 10-minute walk, it can completely change the way you feel. And you cannot talk about diet without talking about sleep and exercise. All of this has to go together. I cannot give somebody a diet and not have them do some sort of exercise. Monstrous waste of time, right? And I cannot have them sleeping too few hours at night. So it all goes together. The vertical diet is really the vertical diet and peak performance. That's the name of the program. Because it includes all these other things that are equally, if not more important than the foods you eat and the foods you should not eat. So sleep, hydration, exercise, nutrition, and avoidance of these, problematic foods, I think, the high allergens or the gut things that cause gut problems. It all goes together. I can't separate any of them, and think that people are going to, run optimally. And the 3 10-minute walks is monstrous, not just for the footsteps, not just for tracking steps. I think a study I read recently showed that they put pedometers on a group of people who walk 10,000 steps a day. And they put pedometers on a group of people who took 3 10-minute walks a day. And these were pretty aggressive. You got your heart rate up a little bit. You were swinging your arms.
It's kind of hard to talk, kind of a little huff and puff in between.
When I do my
your rants.
My rants, I'm kind of breathing, and people are making fun of me, because I'm Irish and my head's purple because I live in Vegas, and I'm out of breath because I'm walking and talking at the same time. But come do a workout with me sometime. Do some 20s with 30-second or 60-second rest periods and see how you feel. And compared to my cardiovascular fitness. But anyhow, the 3 10-minute walks, they logged about 3,000 or 4,000 steps. Had a superior health profile in terms of blood sugars, VO2 max, and everything on less than half of the total steps.
It's amazing.
So the type of step that is taken and the timing. I do the walks post-meal.
That's really super smart.
Now I'm bringing the insulin levels down faster, and those carbohydrates are being shuttled into the muscles preferentially as a part of nutrient partitioning, as opposed to being stored as fat.
And you don't feel that like food coma, after you do a walk.
No.
Right? After you eat, do a walk, you're like ready to go.
Yeah.
I find.
I'll eat breakfast, put my daughter's breakfast on the table, go take a 10-minute walk. When I come back, she's done eating, I can take her to school. Nice thing about this 10-minute walk thing is it's convenient. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
The idea of driving to the gym, doing a 40-minute treadmill, and driving home, who has time for that?
Yeah.
You just don't. The 3 10-minute walks is easy. One after breakfast, one after dinner. Every night, before, even if it's close to bedtime and I've just gotten my last meal in and I have to be in bed in half an hour, I go take a 10-minute walk.
Nice.
Now, sometime throughout the day, just try and squeeze one in.
Yeah.
When I'm at the airport, I'll just, if I get to my gate early, I'll go take a 10-minute walk.
Yeah.
If I'm at a hotel, I'll just spin around the parking lot. If my wife and I go to a restaurant, we walk out the door, set our watch for 5 minutes, and start walking down the street.
That's awesome.
When it goes off, we turn around, walk back, get in our car, and drive home.
Great idea.
We feel amazing as a result. So I guess from the original question is when you're feeling tired, what do you do?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. I pop up and I go take a walk. My eyes are heavy, but I take a walk. I go outside and I walk for 10 minutes and I feel incredible.
So you'll go to icy. So you're not using caffeine to try and kick yourself up. So you use your own energy, your own inertia to try and build that.
I never take caffeine. And as a power lifter, the reason why I didn't take caffeine is because of something that Mikhail Koklayev told me one time. He's a famous Russian lifter, pro strongman, Olympic athlete, Olympic lifter. And he said, when you use stimulants, you lose the ability to draw on that energy when you need it. And it stays, again, elevated chronically, so that now you don't have that adrenaline capacity. You can't find it and pull it for that one specific competitive lift. And that's something that you have to train and know so you can get it when you need it. So that, to me, was what adrenaline was for.
Yeah.
It wasn't to get me through a workout because I had a long day. That's what salt is for. That's what water is for. That's what food is for. That's what sleep is for. Those things get me through my daily workouts.
Yeah.
And the more of those things you use, the less effective they become. You attenuate, of course.
Sure.
And then you have to switch around or take more, and eventually you're just burned out.
Yeah. So when you're maxing out, so you're the world's strongest pro bodybuilder. Right?
Yeah. Not much of a
Deadlifted
distinction there. 837 was my biggest deadlift. Yeah.
That's amazing. So there's a lot of adrenaline, right? That you need to intrinsically.
Yes, there should be. Ideally, you'd be able to draw on that. That would be an optimal moment to be able to say, it's time, and get yourself going and have adrenaline. And I'm saying that if you've used any kind of caffeine or anything, it's going to be hard to grab that when you need it.
Yeah.
The stores may be a little depleted as a result of constantly being asked to keep you fueled up for the whole day or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing this. You're 51, right?
Yeah, 50.
50. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing the weight that you move, Stan. I'm just so impressed.
Yeah. And I did it pretty late.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned before, you probably heard, I've had well over 100 blood tests in the last 10 years. Nice. I used those to monitor my health and improve my performance. I knew when I was unhealthy, I knew when I was healthy, and I knew how it affected my performance. I used it as an opportunity to impact, to change when I had problems with my health. If my blood sugars were elevated, I knew I needed to do something about that, or I wasn't going, if my hemoglobin A1C was elevated, I needed to fix that problem. If my vitamin D was low, prolactin was high, or anything was affecting me negatively for performance, I had to fix it.
Yeah.
And I used those tests, and I think that and the fact that most of what I did was outside the gym, the mobility, the sleeping, the cardio. At the time I was doing 3 10-minute recumbent bike spins. I would have a huge leg day on Sunday, and I found that if on Monday, 3 times throughout the day, for 10 minutes, I would do a 30-second spin, 30-second rest, 30-second spin, 30-second rest on a recumbent bike with a little bit of tension, I get this little blood pump in my legs and knees, and I would recover amazingly fast as a result of doing that, as opposed to just sitting around or sleeping or doing an ordinary day.
Interesting.
And that blood flow, as I've said, that's life. The more you can create blood flow, whether through the 10-minute walks or through additional exercising, it's how I rehabbed my knees from 10 years of chronic tendonitis. I did a rant talking about how, painful chronic tendonitis. Couldn't sit in a car, couldn't sit in an airplane for any period of time. I was grinding on my knees like this all the time. They keep me up at night, throbbing, arthritic. just by adding in enough sodium, getting the vitamin D up, and then doing these banded leg presses every other day for like 5 or 7 sets of 20. So it wasn't a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But the bands kept so much tension, there was so much blood flowing in here, that now, I mean, look at me, I've been sitting here like this, and I don't feel anything in my knees.
That's amazing.
Nothing.
And you lifted legs yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did legs yesterday.
Yeah.
And my knees feel amazing. I don't even remember that they hurt. And they were chronic for over 10 years.
Was that from lifting, or that was just an arthritic?
From lifting.
Okay.
Yeah. The heavy lifting and how it impacted. And the fact that I couldn't stay ahead of recovery on it.
Your squat's a little bit different, the form-wise. So it's more glute, low back, I would...
Yeah, I'm like the human lever, is what my friends used to call me.
Yeah.
I look at everything in terms of leverage.
Okay.
And if I could keep a vertical shin, I didn't get my knees out over my toes, and I could utilize more of my hips and my glutes, I could manage to lift a lot more weight. That's just a technique thing that worked for me.
Yeah. What do you think about the whole butt wink versus no butt wink? Is that...
I don't think it's a great idea to have butt wink. I think any time that lumbar, as the weight gets heavier, or as the reps get higher, or as the years go on, it could be a negative cumulative effect. And from reading Dr. Stuart McGill's stuff, it's the repetition of this. It's the spine continuing to do this, whether it be sit-ups or hyperextensions. He says it delaminates the discs, and then the nucleus starts to push out, and then you end up with all of those problems with bulging discs, etc. So herniations. It's repetition. It might be fine for a while, and he even kind of comes down on stretching as being kind of the opposite stimulus for powerlifting, which should be stability.
Yeah.
Using the core or the spine as all the muscles of the core as a stabilizer, not a flexor. And the more flexibility, the more stretching you try and do, it's counterproductive. And again, that's if you want to stretch and do yoga, do that. But don't think you can powerlift at the same time because it's the wrong stimulus.
Can't do both.
You can't do both. And people who are powerlifters who try and do yoga to help back problems can be setting themselves back. They should be doing resistance type movements like he shows with the planks and the side planks and those kinds of things.
Sure.
And again, Stuart McGill is amazing. His book's amazing. And if anybody has any injury, he walks you through it. It's something that I think everybody should read. I've been able to apply the same techniques to any injury on the body.
That's awesome. That one, and then The Gift of Injury was another one you recommended.
Yeah, and that's Stuart McGill and Brian Carroll's collaboration. Brian being a great powerlifter, an easier read, very easy to follow.
Yeah,
I think anybody can recover from just about any injury. Shoulders being a little more complicated.
Yeah,
those are tough. But still, the same kind of thing is that you try and find pain-free movements. And then when I get a client that has an injury, we go in and that's what we do. We just move around for a bit and try and figure out, does that hurt or not? If it hurts, we don't do it. If it doesn't hurt, then we want to keep moving it, because if it's injured, you have to keep moving it, or you're going to start encapsulating. You lose range of motion, you lose blood flow, scar tissue, all of that. So you have to find movement, but it has to be pain-free movement.
I see.
And certainly I've been through plenty of that in my career.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up here, what are some exercises that people should be doing that they're not if they want to lose fat? I know squatting and deficit deadlifts are a big one for you.
Yeah.
A lot of people now, I think because of CrossFit, are getting more under the bar doing squats and deadlifts.
Yeah.
But still, I see women go to the gym and they're just doing like bicep curls with like a TRX or whatever.
Yeah.
What should people be doing?
Well, back up and say, what's the best exercise? The one you'll do. Okay, what's the best diet? The one you'll follow. You have to create a calorie deficit to lose weight. Exercise is certainly a very important component of that, because it burns calories in addition to eating less. Exercise is not as important as the diet, so you can't out-exercise a bad diet. You definitely have to have that under control, or you're just wasting time. Also, if your thyroid is low, this exercise is wasting time. If your testosterone's low, trying to lift weights to build muscle is a waste of time. So hormones are hugely important, and how you affect those with sleep and nutrition can drastically impact the benefit that you get from exercise. Low thyroid, you better fix that problem, or whatever you do in there is a waste of time. And I always tell people when I'm doing seminars, if you're a trainer and you have a client that's trying to lose weight and you don't address the fact that to get a blood test or find out whether thyroid, you're stealing their money, because they're not going to lose weight. And if you haven't, and so we talk about the things that impact thyroid from the diet, the iodine in particular, and of course a healthy liver, because most of the thyroid conversion happens in the liver, and hence the fructose. So there's some things you can do to improve metabolism and improve thyroid function. I'm not necessarily saying you have to take thyroid,
Sure.
But you need to address the problem somehow. Same with testosterone. If you have low T, it might be because you're not sleeping enough. You might have sleep apnea or something. So if you remedy those problems, then you could drastically improve your testosterone production. So beyond that, back to your original question, the 3 10-minute walks are huge. Those are monstrous in terms of that'd be the first thing I would do. You could lose a significant amount of weight. And then trying to stimulate muscle in some way. And I don't care if that's push-ups, air squats, a little goblet squat with a weight of some sort. I don't think there's any exercise that's significantly better than the other if you're exercising regularly. But of course, anytime you incorporate the legs, you're burning significantly more calories. We talked earlier when I came in about these high ROI movements. What's your return on investment? If you're going to spend an hour at the gym, could you have spent 20 minutes there and gotten a greater benefit out of it? And I think in most cases the answer is yes, if you would incorporate the legs into the movements, particularly a deep knee bend type of movement, whether it be walking stairs, which tends to be pretty low impact. You don't have a lot of that eccentric load. It's almost all concentric, push, push, push up the stairs, but you still get a good knee bend. And so you're lifting a significant amount of body weight with these large muscle groups. Anything you can do to involve the legs, and it could be a leg press, it could be squats, it could be the weighted carries, anything that you can start to work the leg muscles is going to give you drastically more results than your arm muscle stuff.
But when you do legs, it takes a lot of effort, right? And so people tend to not want to push it that much unless they've been doing this for a while, because it takes a lot out of you. And sometimes people are like, I just want to go quick and get it done.
My dad's 87. We gave him a little Reebok step. And he'll go out in the garage and he'll just step up on the step. He holds on to a handle and just step up on the step. So there's a progression. I don't want to take anybody from 0 to 100.
Sure.
0 to 1 is an improvement. If you're drinking regular soda and you go to diet soda, I'm a happy man. Right? If you go from no exercise to 1 10-minute walk a day, I'm a happy man. It's a progression. And so, the leg exercises are going to be harder. And harder things generally give you better results.
Good point.
And so I'm going to encourage them first to find something they enjoy doing, and then gradually over time we'll make that, you got to get yourself just a little uncomfortable. I'm going to say about the 10-minute walk. You can't sing, you're going to breathe a little bit. And with the squatting, it's the same thing. And we mentioned earlier, the first thing I try and do is make it enjoyable. Find a movement they enjoy, where they're bending their legs, whether it's walking up the stairs or whether it's, you could squat onto an elevated box, maybe with a little Bosu ball on it, so it felt, good. Just squat onto those big rubber balls. That feels pretty good. So anything like that, and if lifting weights isn't their thing, I'm not encouraging them to go to the gym. If they like to play tennis, play tennis. Find some sort of activity to do.
That's a good point. Well, with yoga, it involves a lot of legs. There's a lot of lunge-like movements.
Absolutely.
But it's funny that you bring that up. So I've been reading a lot of research on where insulin resistance starts within the muscle tissue and diabetes and everything. And there's this differential effect with leg muscles versus in the upper body. That the upper body, even in type 2 diabetics, full insulin dependence, that the shoulder and the arms and so forth will uptake glucose, and it's not insulin sensitive, but the legs become preferentially more insulin resistant. So what you're saying is very congruent with that research that's emerging out of this. I think it's somewhere in Sweden, some researchers have kind of found this. So the legs appear to be, in their words, where diabetes starts. Just crazy when you think about it. So squatting and everything like that.
It's just a fantastic movement. Sure, it's harder. I've trained so many people that just like to do upper body, and I'm like, what? All the benefit is you could not do upper body. For years, everybody sees, every time I post a video, it's me doing trap bar squats or 20 rep squats or
carries.
Nobody's seen me do a bench video in years. I hate benching. I just don't feel like I get a return on it anymore.
Interesting.
I would rather do push-ups. I'd rather do dips because at least you're involving the core. I'd rather do chin-ups because at least you're involving the core. So as far as upper body movements go. But I like leg training. I'll train legs, preferentially over upper body anytime. Which you wouldn't think so, because my legs for my body proportionately are smaller than my big upper body. It's just, that's the luck of the draw, I guess. And genetics gave me a lot bigger upper body than lower. But I just, as far as the benefit I think I get from it, I love to go in and squat because I enjoy the way it feels, and so that's what I try and coach is make it feel good. You should enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you always squat pretty heavy?
I haven't squatted too heavy too much. I go through these. I cycle everything. I'll do a hypertrophy training block for about 6 weeks. I put this in the program as well, my exact hypertrophy block and my exact strength training block. I cycle it just to keep myself interested. I've got the attention span of a gnat. It's probably why I bodybuilded and powerlifted throughout my career, is because I'd get bored of one and I'd have to go do the other. Yeah, and so I do both. And heavy's a relative term. Some people always, kind of weigh in. Nobody's more concerned about my health than me. Mm-hmm. And I'm, by all measures, a hypochondriac. Yeah. Having 100 blood tests in 10, 12 years is a lot. Yeah. But I've had sonograms and MRIs, and I've had calcification scan and cardiac angiography and EKG, and I go in all the time for any reason to try and find out what my condition is and to see if I can improve it. Nobody's more concerned about my health than me. I see the body, particularly now that I don't compete. Yeah. I see the body as regenerative, not degenerative. And having had 2 MRIs and 2 surgeons tell me that I needed hip replacement surgery because I could hardly walk and it was throbbing at night and I couldn't hardly bend my hip before I set world records in powerlifting. Mm-hmm. I went through therapy on my hip and got it, completely healed. Now, I don't even remember which hip it is. The only way I remember is when I used to get out of the car, I'd have to pick this one up to pull it out of the car because I couldn't do it physically with my own muscle because it hurt too bad, it was too weak. Same with the knees. Yeah. Regenerative, not degenerative. Same with the shoulder. I have a torn rotator cuff, but I've been able to build the muscle around it such that now I can pick my kids up and lift some things. I can't lift the weights I used to lift with it, nor would I want to. It's regenerative, not degenerative. Well, how is it regenerative? The only way to make it such is you have to create a stimulus, and hopefully not so much that you're not recovering from it, too much fatigue, etc., digging a deeper hole than you can get out of. Yeah. So the squats, to me, actually, I think, keep my tendons strong and stimulate all of the necessary reactions to bring nutrients there to build and repair. And like you said, muscle strength, the grip strength, is shown in elderly patients to be a very good indicator of who is going to die first. Yeah. And so it's not that I need to bench 500 pounds to prevent, to delay mortality. But I do need to continue to stimulate my body. And I'm trying to be very careful about that, very deliberate about that with this continual movement or these going to the gym. And I do pain-free movements. So I'm not in there hurting myself. If I lift heavy, it's pain-free. Yeah. I used to limp out of the gym. I don't do that anymore. Yeah. And I listen to my body. Some days I can go in and squat 600. And some days I can barely do 2 1/4 without starting to feel something. So I go find a different exercise. I don't force myself to do anything that hurts.
That's smart. Really good tip. I think as young men, we don't listen to those cues.
No.
Is that one that's my next question is what's one thing that you do differently now that you wish you would have known in your 20s? When it comes to fitness and nutrition.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff outside the gym. I was always a really good sleeper, and I always got enough calories in. Yeah. But now the type of calories matters because I got up over 300 pounds a couple times, once in the mid-90s and then again in early 2010. I got up over 300 pounds, and both times it was not a good thing. Yeah. It was a dirty bulk. I was eating a ton of food I shouldn't have eaten, the gallon of milk a day and the cheeseburgers and the pizzas and what I used to call the horizontal diet, the IHOP for breakfast, the burritos for lunch, the pizza for dinner, the kind of diet my clients used to do when they were trying to compete in pro strongman or powerlifting, etc. And when I changed the diet to include more of the micronutrients and the easier to digest foods that I use, they lost fat, gained muscle, got stronger. And they show, people who have followed Hafthor Bjornsson and Brian Shaw over the last year have seen that these guys have gotten much stronger and leaner at the same time.
It's amazing.
Because they completely changed the foods they ate. So that was one of the big lessons I learned, is the types of foods that I ate when I was trying to bulk and put on mass. And why I'm so adamant about changing people's nutrition, because then it changes everything else.
Totally. I love it, Stan. What's the biggest health problem as a society that we face right now? And if you were to bump shoulders with a politician in an elevator of sorts, what would you want them to know about? So what do you think is the most pressing societal level issue we could change?
Boy, in terms of health outcomes,
Yeah,
we just
health
have to look at what the top 5 most prescribed medicines are.
Yeah.
And we're right there. Statins, which have a horrific track record. I mean, what is it? 1 out of 300 people might see a small result. There's really, I don't need to go through the science, but there's more negatives than positives. And, prevention, there should be more education and prevention going on. Prescribing blood pressure medication without addressing things like apnea or body weight or calcium deficiency or sodium. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but a lot of the sick care is, I think, the biggest problem. I also think that a lot of these problems, the prescriptions that are being made, is because of obesity, and I think a lot of that has to do with these the white flour, the white sugar, and the polyunsaturated processed food oils. The hexane processed canolas and corn oils and the rest of them. Those 3 things are a public health crisis. There's no question about it. And in the quantities that they've been consumed, and they're so cheap. There's a reason why people are eating as much of them. Not just they taste good, but they're affordable.
And they're everywhere.
And
Whole
they're
Foods,
everywhere.
even the salad bar there. I mean, you can't get anything without
I complain
canola.
about that all the time. I can't
It's a
eat
pain.
there.
Yeah.
I go to Cheesecake Factory, and they will sear the hamburger in canola oil before putting it on the flame grill because it keeps it together better, so it doesn't fall apart in the flame grill.
Oh my gosh.
Well, what do you think happens to me when I eat that burger that was seared in vegetable oil? I've got a terrible allergic response to those vegetable oils. I get gastric distress. Before I even leave the restaurant, I'm racing to the bathroom.
Wow.
And I did a whole video on this with some great descriptive details if anybody's interested. But the point being is that I have to be really cautious about those things.
Those oils, really, you're uniquely susceptible to those oils.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that unique. There's a lot of people that are that have that problem, a decent percentage. Like there are people with peanut allergies. Like there are people with lactose intolerances. It just depends. Some people are allergic to eggs.
Interesting. That's a great point because they think they have IBS, but they don't. There's something triggering it. It could be these oils that are from everywhere. Wow.
And that's what I've discovered, and that's why I'm somewhat restrictive when I get an athlete, particularly a female athlete who's been suffering from digestion problems, which most of them are, because they eat so much of these anti-nutrients in trying to pursue their goals, and coffee. So I address those things first, and I think that the digestion issues are huge. But acid reflux medication, I mean, there's reasons those things are happening. Apnea, that's your number 1 cause of high blood pressure and heart attacks right there, pretty damn close. So I don't really have the answer for that. I know why they're prescribing what they're prescribing is just to delay the inevitable. At that point, if they're at the doctor's office, if the doctor was to tell them to go lose weight, then I'm not sure how that fuels the drug industry and their sales.
Right.
But that should be the answer. And I know that we do that, not we, but they do that in other countries. They incentivize the doctor to minimize these return visits with things like incentives to decrease smoking or decrease body weight or what have you. And I'm not certain, comparatively speaking, how their health outcomes are as a result. But
better than ours, I think, for most countries.
Yeah, because there's a disincentive to come in and get treated for things that you could, potentially treat yourself.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't. And the big thing is it doesn't have to be that hard. As health professionals, we, if I can refer to myself as that, we overcomplicate things with these competitions over what's best. The perfect being the enemy of the good. 3 10-minute walks and some calorie modification, and you're 90% of the way there in most cases, and a little better sleep. You're 90% of the way there in most cases. But we argue over, particular food groups or types or macro percentages are so aggressively that we're frustrating. I think the people that need the help the most.
Yeah. Great point. Love it. So if someone's listening right now and they're not familiar with your work and they want to learn more about the vertical diet, what's the best URL or website to check that out?
Theverticaldiet.com.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Come check it out.
And is the ebook, and then is there a course too, or just the ebook?
Yeah, it's a digital download. It's a PDF file that
I have
I've offered.
I bought it, guys. I bought it on the airplane actually, at Southwest. Their Wi-Fi. I was like, yes, I can download this on the Wi-Fi. So that was cool.
And you probably didn't expect from Meat Neck like me. It's 50 pages long. It's very comprehensive with over 100 references to scientific articles and professionals in the industry and video links to help you better understand what it is that I'm delivering and the message I'm delivering.
It's awesome. I love your message. I think you're one of the only people in the if I want to say the fitness industry or bodybuilding or strength community that's talking the language of both strength performance and all that, but also functional medicine, micronutrients, sleep. So I want to commend you. I'm very grateful for those conversations, Dan. Also, if people are not familiar with your work and they're like at the gym right now and they want to follow you, Instagram, YouTube, like what's the best place to
All Stan Efferding.
Okay.
It's the thing about having a unique name. Stan Efferding is my my YouTube. I have some great rhino rants on there.
Awesome.
So I love
the
that
Shark
stuff.
Take one, guys, is really good.
It's fun.
I love that one.
Stan Efferding on Instagram, at Stan Efferding on Instagram. That's my website, stanefferding.com. That'll get you all back into the verticaldiet.com and the cooler.com, my Shark Tank product.
Yeah.
Those all lead to the same place, so you can all find me there.
Awesome, buddy. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
you.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, guys, really appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for listening and watching all the way through. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Definitely follow Stan over on YouTube and Instagram. He's got awesome rants and videos that you can learn a lot from. And we'll catch you on the next video.